Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. It is I, still sanctimonious, the sanctimonious RMB here on what Marco Ramius would say, a great day, comrades. We sail into history. Today is, of course, the day that, at least in North America, Endgame begins public screenings for the public this evening. Of course, the official opening day is tomorrow, but tonight, most of us, the world is seeing Endgame. I know a few people have to wait a little bit more time. Of course, the movie's already shattered by a huge margin records in the Middle Kingdom in China, which is amazing. So I figured once again, people want to talk Endgame. I'm here to talk Endgame, but no spoilers. So any of you people who want to spoil the movie, don't do that. It's bad form. Your mom doesn't want you to do that. Neither does your dad. Neither do your ancestors. So anyway, first of all, I want to mention that this podcast, what is this? I don't know. This is a Robservations live chat, and it is brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's Grooming Products for men who want to look good and feel great. I want to thank Lucky Tiger for their continued sponsorship, and it's great to have them on board. Well, I'm going to get right into it. I got a lot of letters to read today from people, all kinds of different letters. Letters from some regulars, some great regulars are always sending me great letters, and then from a lot of new viewers, a lot of new people. In the last day, I had over 1,000, almost 1,500 people subscribe to this channel because of my thoughts on Endgame. I want to welcome all of those new viewers to the Post-Geek Singularity community. What I'm hoping will be the most positive corner of the geek webosphere. Is there one? If there is, you've come to the right place. This place, the Post-Geek Singularity, should be putting a smile on your face and a smile on your imagination. And everyone here is an imagination connoisseur and and let's face it, we're all geeks, right? I'm just going to get right into it. So for those of you new viewers, I've taken now to reading letters. This is going to be, I'm going to stop and start a lot because I've got a lot of great letters I want to read today to celebrate the release of Endgame. So this first letter comes from Jeff Chang. Robert, absolute pleasure to listen to you. I've listened to you on both Collider as well as John Campia's show. To be honest, I enjoy your contributions more on John Campia's show than Collider Heroes, as you seem to have similar sensibilities when it comes to comic book films than I do with John. Apologies on the grammar on this, as I type on a phone and I have latex on my hands at the moment, as I am an FX makeup effects artist. Which brings me to my point. I'm not attempting to promote myself, as I already have an intern position with my dream job, but being that I'm just starting out and you love all things comics, I invite you to check out my Instagram page, Jeff Chang's FX, as I hope to share a few pics of my work with you, but not surprisingly, you do not have the option to share images on your page. Highlights on my Instagram: Alangela Skeletor, Zombie Spider-Man, Zombie Colonel America, or Captain America. I hope you stop by, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks for repping us geeks on a bigger platform than most of us get the opportunity to partake in. Also, if you're ever in Vegas, more specifically Boulder City, Nevada, come out and visit the Tom Devlin's Monster Museum. I think you'll love it. We also have the only existing Spider Gremlin from Gremlins 2 by Rick Baker and his amazing team. Sorry for the novel. Keep up the great work. Well, Jeff Chang's FX. By the way, go to his Instagram page, check it out. You can, first of all, send pictures to my website, theburnettwork.net. We have the new Imagination Connoisseur Gallery. There's a submission form. You can send me as much stuff as you want to share with your fellow imagination connoisseurs. Go there. It's up in the top. The submission form's up in the top right-hand corner. Just click on that. You can send pictures to your heart's content. Share your imagination with other imagination connoisseurs. Check out Jeff's page. That's awesome. By the way, I used to work in special makeup effects. Basically, I was a glorified PA. I was a runner, but I worked for Tony Gardner's Altarian Studios. I think there's a picture of me I put up on Instagram of me actually painting one of Dick Durock's Swamp Thing heads from the Swamp Thing TV series. So yes, I worked in makeup effects for a couple of years. I worked on movies like Sleepwalkers. I have a screen credit in Army of Darkness. I worked on Cast a Deadly Spell. What else did I work on? I forget. But yes, I have a screen credit on cast a deadly spell. I actually worked on a first version of Super Mario Brothers before Annabelle and Rocky took over as directors. Annabelle Jankiel and Rocky Morton, was it? I think. Anyway, yes, I have a soft spot in my heart for makeup effects artists, so check out that work. And thank you for writing. Love to hear from a new viewer, which is always fantastic. This next letter comes from Kelly Oman. Hey, R&B, I first just want to say I discovered you through the John Campea show. I love your take on movies and all entertainment. You and John work great together. You joining the show has really added something to it. I would love to hear where Endgame ranks in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for you, and where it ranks among all comic book movies. I absolutely cannot wait for this movie to come out. I still remember opening night of the first Avengers film like it was yesterday. I saw it in an AMC IMAX screen. They had a costume contest where 5 groups dressed up as the full team of Avengers. Our theater then voted on which team won, and the winners each receive an AMC gift card. I also remember the feeling just after watching it and how blown away I was. I knew I just witnessed something special, an event film. I've seen almost all the MCU movies opening night. Infinity War was no different. That movie was an event. All the emotions I felt while watching it, I will never forget. I was white knuckling it during the battle on Titan, completely wrapped up in everything going on. I teared up multiple times during the ending. It's truly amazing how much we care about these characters. I have been counting down the days till I see Endgame. I finally see it tomorrow night, Thursday. I know this will be another experience I soon won't forget. Sorry this became such a long message. I can't contain my excitement. Always keep up the great work, Rob. Well, Kelly, your sentiments pretty much mirrored my own. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. And I will tell you where I thought that this movie fell in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the rest of the comic book movie pantheon. But I have another letter that I think goes a long way toward explaining feelings. This comes from one of my favorite members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, the great Terry Flynn. And Kelly, you're going to like this one too. Dear Rob, I write this having just got home from watching Endgame. Obviously, I won't include spoilers in case you read this. I feel drunk as a skunk despite having had no alcohol today. Getting the bus home, I tried not to think about the cinematic masterpiece I had just watched, as I'd cry. And I'd have some nice person ask me if something was wrong, and I'd no doubt have totally puzzled them with my answer. Truth be told, I have not felt this way about a superhero film since my first, Superman. I deeply appreciated the Nolan Batman trilogy, but today I felt like that 6-year-old again. Except that when I watched Superman, I didn't blub. Today I cried 5 times in a film. To quote my tweet, the definition of Britishness is crying in the film, seeing in your peripheral vision the people on either side of you crying surreptitiously, and nobody daring to look to their side, since we don't do that kind of emotion. Stiff upper lip and all that. I was actually glad I had a woman either side. I might have felt a bit cramped by having guys there. Edit this out if a spoiler, especially since my first blub was in the first. Well, I won't say that. Yeah, I'm not going to edit. I'm not going to say that. Terry's first blub was where my first blub was. If I get your meaning on blub, I was like dabbing my eyes, but I'm not going to say when it was, but I was right there with you, buddy. Yes, the guy who is known in certain corners of social media for my highly inappropriate out loud comments during a Lord of the Rings film that could have earned me a kicking, was slightly afraid about my reactions. I won't repeat my Lord of the Rings comment for fear of raising Mike's blood pressure at what I might unleash in the comments and increase his moderating low workload, laugh out loud. But you know what I said. Yes. Anyway, I wish we Brits were more touchy-feely. Truth be told, I had to close my eyes for a moment at one point in the film, as I knew I'd actually let out a loud blub otherwise. The woman to my left was already desperately dabbing at her face with the tissue, biting on her own hand. I've never experienced that in a film. Consider me humbled. Long live Kevin Feige. Kind regards, Terry. Well, these two letters sort of echo my own sentiments. As everyone knows, I saw the movie on Tuesday. I saw it 2 days ago, and I'm going tonight. I will be seeing it in less than 6 hours again at the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood. I've got my Bring Me Thanos unlicensed T-shirt. I bought on Facebook because I was one of those pop-up ads for one day only. I've got actually some pretty good shirts doing that. I don't think bootleg merchandise is necessarily a good thing, but I thought this shirt was pretty funny. I'm a cat person. My cat's even been Skippy John Jones has even been laying on this shirt because it's been on my desk for a while, and there's even cat hair on it now, so it's authentic. I feel. I'm deliriously excited to see it with a room full, a giant theater full, a packed house full of nerds like me, nerds like us, imagination connoisseurs who cannot wait for this film. But where does it rank in the pantheon of comic book movies, and where does it rank for me in the pantheon of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies? I think that's a difficult question to answer, and I know we all want to quantify things and put things in lists. I love lists as much as the next person. I don't know if you guys remember this. You might be too young, but there was a book that came out. I want to say I was in elementary school, but it was called simply The Book of Lists. Now, I love the Guinness Book of World Records when I was a kid, but this book I even probably loved more. It was just a book of lists, of all kinds of lists, random lists. I mean, it was so much fun to read, perfect bathroom reading. I don't know whatever happened to my copy because I don't have it anymore. I would have got it and brought it here and showed it. But the Book of Lists was a great book, and we all want to list these movies and quantify them in some way. And this morning on the John Campea show, I was thinking about that. We were talking about that. Where does this movie fall? First of all, I'm going to say right off the bat that Avengers Endgame is, to me, very different from any of the other movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I want to say that because it focuses, and how could it not after what we're watching, on emotion. The first, I would say, 2/3 of this movie really concentrate on characters and emotion more so than I expected. And first of all, there were things that I said about Infinity War before I saw it that I wanted to see. I said this on Collider Heroes. I said this with the late, great Jon Schnepp and Amy Dallin many, many times. I said, look, I said flat out that I want Thanos to win. I want to see at the end of the movie the snap to happen. I never thought I was going to see that. And I did. They went there. And I was hoping, and there was a definitive ending. A lot of people I've gone back and forth, it was a cliffhanger. No, that story ended, and a new story will begin with Endgame. And one of the things that I was really hoping for is that, when a cataclysm happens and when people have failed in their task, whether it's a personal cataclysm or whether it's a larger cataclysm when a tornado comes and lays waste to a town. I've never had that experience, but I can't imagine some people have. And what is it like when that occurs? How do people deal with this kind of loss? And I was wondering, in a movie, in a superhero film, are they going to spend a lot of time dealing with that? I mean, does it make it not enjoyable when you're watching these heroes that we've come to love over 21 films? Like, how much time would they spend dealing with the ramifications of what happened in Infinity War? Is that a good thing? Does that serve your audience well? I didn't know going in. And I will say this. I was very surprised at how emotional and how well thought out and engrossing I found this movie from the get-go. It is different from any Marvel Cinematic Universe movie in that sense. When people talk about what are the best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I always want to hark back and say, to me, these movies, especially, let's talk about let's take the 4 Avengers movies and move them out of the equation, because I think they're a different kind of movie going experience than the standalone films are. Because traditionally movies are or a great novel really are the stories of, unless it's an ensemble cast, it's usually the story of one person. You're following one character going through a journey of self-discovery. And to that end, I think one of the reasons that we're here 22 movies later, and one of the reasons that we're all so deliriously excited about Endgame, was because the MCU began with a really good movie. Iron Man 1, if I recently we rewatched it, and I was struck by the fact that it really is the story of a man who undergoes a fundamental character change throughout this film. He starts out king of the world, rich tycoon, playboy. He can sleep with any woman he wants. He can buy anything he wants. He's got friends. He's basically a rock and roller, but of the tech world. And because of what happens through the course of that movie, develops a conscience and a soul and has an epiphany about the kind of person he wants to be. And even the superheroic conflict that we see at the end of that film with Obadiah Stane is really, it's just 2 men. And the stakes are Tony Stark's, really his soul and his business and his philosophy. And it really is the story of one man in a way, as far as a superhero movie can be. It's a pretty intimate film. It's an intimate study of one man and how one man comes to change his worldview within the context of an action adventure superhero film. And it's a wonderful, wonderful movie. But if you were to compare that to Avengers Endgame, it's about as far away from that kind of a movie as you can imagine. But what I loved, again, like with Kelly, when I first saw Avengers, the first Avengers in 2000, was it 12 now? I was sitting there, my heart was aflutter. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I honestly never thought I would ever see. I mean, I grew up as a kid having arguments with the neighborhood kids because they were Marvel fans and I was a DC fan. Like, I've talked about this a lot on the show, that I was a Justice League guy, and the Justice League could beat up the Avengers, and people are like, no, the Silver Surfer is way more powerful than Superman, Norrinrad and Kal-El, we would have these conversations. I was a product of that. But I also, as I've worked in the entertainment business now, this summer will mark my 30th year working as a professional. Those who might not know me or who are new here, I began my career. I was the art department production assistant on Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. My name's in the end credits. That was the first movie I ever worked on. God, 30 years ago. But I never would have thought, as I worked my way through the entertainment industry from the late 80s upwards, that I would ever see an Avengers movie. I mean, as I've said before, I would have been like, you can't just go make an Avengers movie. You'd have to make a Thor movie or a Captain America movie or an Iron Man movie before anyone knew and certainly who's going to make a Giant Man or Ant-Man or a Wasp movie. No one's going to do that. I never would have believed that we live in a world now where all of these characters exist, where not only did they make these movies. I mean, remember the journey that Marvel took, the journey that Kevin Feige took is, and I talked about this before, he'd worked on 13 different Marvel films as a producer before he came aboard and created the MCU with Iron Man. And first, if you guys don't forget, but Iron Man was a Paramount movie. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was going to be Paramount. Then they took it away from Paramount. They financed it themselves. And then, of course, Disney purchased them. They've had a very interesting journey. And the reason we're here today, the reason we're all so deliriously excited, because there was a vision behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And some people, I'm a comic book purist, but I also understand what adaptation is all about. That if you were to put like the X-Men costumes as they existed in sort of between the classic X-Men, the hundreds, after X-Men 94 or whatever, or Giant Size X-Men 1, those costumes, you can't translate those costumes directly to the big screen. It's very difficult. Those kinds of bright colors. So you have to adapt. But even the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done a wonderful job. Captain America's final costume in the first Avenger looked functional. It was an incredible adaptation of the Captain America costume. Yeah, we got the comic book costume when he's on the USO tour and all that. But then that sort of paramilitary version of the Captain America costume in the first Avenger. What a great way of adapting the Captain America look for live action and making you believe that on a World War II battlefield in the European theater, Captain America could operate looking like Captain America, but also in a functional costume, like functional that would work on the battlefield. Now, this is what I mean is people who are new here know or don't know. One of my favorite things about fantasy cinema is what I call verisimilitude, which I'm stealing from the great Richard Donner, who talked about one of the things he had to do during Superman the movie was make something look realistic. He had to make people believe that in the real world these things could exist. That's what verisimilitude is. And when you're making a science fiction, fantasy, or horror film or a comic book movie, verisimilitude becomes of paramount importance because you must convince your audience that what they're seeing is real. You need to suspend their disbelief for them. And there's a million choices when you're making a movie that can destroy that illusion. And one of the great things about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just like with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, is they create this world that you believe in. I was wondering, how are they going to make Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man even exist in the same plane? Like, or Hulk? Are we going to believe these characters could actually interact together? Like in the frame, do we believe them? And then, of course, you see Avengers and that shot they use in the trailer that we are all familiar with. That maybe you'll see again sometime. That swirling shot around the Avengers that Joss Whedon and his DP created in Avengers 1. We were in. We believed. Now, Avengers Endgame is a film that could not exist without all of them. And I mean, couldn't exist if all 21 movies didn't exist. We have come to love and cherish those characters. The actors have become, you cannot disassociate the actors from their characters. I mean, they're so indelibly their own. Tony Stark, Iron Man is Robert Downey Jr. Thor is Chris Hemsworth. Black Widow is Scarlett Johansson. I mean, they've become so ingrained in our psyches. And I think one of the reasons that I loved Avengers Endgame so much, and I dearly loved the film, is, and you'll see, it works on so many different levels, more levels than I think, or at least maybe not more levels, but there's a lot more to these levels in Endgame than we've ever seen in any previous Marvel movie. Certainly in terms of the dramatic quotient, the character interplay, the feelings involved. If I think this film is actually, which seems crazy to say, but in terms of our characters, the most grounded and relatable in terms of the human emotions that are being shown to us as an audience member. And I was surprised at how much I felt in this movie. Now, I was deliriously giddy for the entire duration of Infinity War. I loved it because even with the first two Avengers films, which I loved, this film, Infinity War, opened it up, brought in the Guardians, brought in Doctor Strange, and it gave me the same feeling I felt when I was reading, for instance, the Marvel's miniseries, which was wonderful, or Crisis on Infinite Earths, where you're reading a big crossover event, or even when I like the Mutant Massacre, for instance, which involved a lot of the Marvel universe. It was a different experience than even the first Avengers was, because there were other players involved, and certainly the canvas was cosmic, and it was amazing. And again, I sat in Infinity War delighted, feeling like my 8-year-old had come back to the forefront in my brain. Not that doesn't happen pretty much on a daily basis, but Endgame was, if this makes any sense, was more of the adult version of that. I felt when I was watching this film, especially the first part of it, I felt like I was watching a drama. about characters that had gone through this crucible and they had come out the other side, changed people, let's just say. And they were dealing with loss and regret, and in such a way that I was unexpectedly taken in by this. And I think, look, I've already seen people online who've seen this movie that talk about the pacing and, if you removed part of the beginning of the movie, the pace would be better. Look, I understand. Not everybody wants to feel, and not everyone wants to be as contemplative when they watch a superhero movie. I, however, do. I've loved science fiction, fantasy, and horror cinema, and sci-fi and superhero cinema my whole life. But I take genre cinema seriously. That's why some of my favorite horror films, my favorite science fiction movies, and they tend to be serious. I believe that people love the Christopher Nolan movies because they're a very serious take on the Batman mythos, which was even different. While Tim Burton's take was dark and gothic, it was still kind of a pop take on Batman, whereas the Nolan Batman movies were far more grounded in the real world. Even the Joker, who represented sort of chaos in a post 9/11 world, so brilliantly done, really was on a different kind of a level than definitely the Batman film starting in 89 with Tim Burton's Batman. And on a different level, they're doing different things than what the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has totally embraced the pop art origins of the comic books. I mean, they appeal to us as children, and they appeal to us as adults. It's there for the child in all of us, the same way that, to me, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has the same appeal that Star Wars does. I mean, I think people take Star Wars even a little bit more seriously, but I was surprised at how adult Endgame felt. And I was taken aback by that. And that's why I felt things in Endgame that I haven't felt in any comic book movie since, maybe, as Terry pointed out, Superman the movie. I mean, and I was surprised by this. And then, of course, the movie does deliver on anything you've ever wanted to see in a giant team up superhero fest. I mean, look, the MCU already gave us they already gave us Infinity War, and they gave us the airport battle in Civil War. And, you even go back to the first Iron Man and the battles against Obadiah Stane and Tony Stark had, in Ironmonger versus Iron Man. So what it does is it reminds you first that there are stakes and there are emotions and that there are real people involved. Well, there's only half the people in the entire universe there were at the beginning of Infinity War. And what I was just so taken aback by is how much I was emotionally involved. And a lot of that came because I've adored the past 21 movies. The high points, to me, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe has been good to great. Nothing has sucked. Even though Thor: The Dark World, I'm not particularly think it's the greatest movie in the world, it's still, in the pantheon of fantasy films that have ever been made, it's still pretty damn good. Iron Man 2 is better than I remember. And there's a lot to enjoy in Iron Man 2. Hell, at the end of Iron Man 2, when Rhodey and Tony are fighting together in their armors and they're back to back, come on. There's stuff to be had. There's enjoyment to be had in all of these movies. And this idea that everything has to be all or nothing, or it's great, or this sucked. First of all, anyone who knows me knows I can't stand it when people say, "Oh, it sucked." A lot of work goes into movies, and I'm not saying you have to take that into consideration, because if they don't do it for you, they don't do it for you. And I've always said to people that movies are a luxury item. And you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from, and you're not worried about where you're going to sleep at night. And a lot of people in the world are worried about those very things. They don't know anything about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're not thinking about what theater they're going to see Endgame tonight in. They're just thinking about survival. So I know already, I'm acknowledging that, it's great that we live in a world and we live in a place where we can get so excited about these movies. But I got to tell you, where does Endgame fall? Honestly, to me, Endgame, even in the pantheon of the 4 Avengers movies, is in a class by itself. Because while it couldn't have existed at all with what came before, and it certainly couldn't have existed without Infinity War being the kind of movie it is, it involved me emotionally the way no other superhero movie ever has. I mean, maybe I was involved with Superman the movie as a child, but as an adult, I was absolutely taken aback by how thoughtful this movie was and how um, how smart the movie was, and I was taken aback by that. And I love the fact that even in this day and age where we're all a bunch of jaded imagination connoisseurs, and we're still in a geektopia where we're getting amazing stuff. I mean, you can go see Endgame multiple times this weekend if you can find tickets, and then you're going to get the Battle of Winterfell on Sunday. I've always said, people, we live in heady times, and having a movie like this to watch that we can all share. And I'm so excited. There are moments in this movie that I've wanted to see. There was one moment in particular that was actually spoiled for me that I didn't know the context, but in the context of the movie, it's just so satisfying. It's so, I mean, I really feel, here's what makes me the most excited about movies and television and novels. I love it when I feel that the authors or the creators of whatever it is I'm watching know and understand what I not only expect, but what I'm hoping for and what I really want deep down from whatever it is I'm experiencing. Now, I was a fan of, I'll give you an example. I was a fan of Stephen King's different seasons, and I used to read, which came out in, I think, 82, and I bought it, when it came out. I have it probably wasn't the first edition, but I had the first trade hardcover, first hardcover edition that was released, I think. And I would read Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption every year for the holidays, every year, because it's only like a 100-page novella. And when the movie was coming out, the first time I ever heard about the movie, Frank Darabont actually told me about it at the House of Pies when I was having lunch with Dave Scow and him, like back in 1990. I had met Dave Scow working on Texas Chainsaw because he'd wrote it. He was friends with Frank Darabont, and Frank Darabont wasn't the Frank Darabont we know now. And he would hang out and talk about monster model kits and resin models. And he had just bought the rights. He'd made a movie called The Woman in the Room, and he just bought the rights to Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, which later became the Shawshank Redemption. Now, is the Shawshank Redemption a perfect translation of the story? No. For instance, Morgan Freeman's character was a white Irish dude in the story. But that movie, when I saw the Shawshank Redemption and I walked out of that film, I actually saw it for the first time at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Theater. I was so satisfied as somebody who'd read that story probably 24 times by the time the movie first came out. I was so satisfied. I felt that Frank Darabont knew he had such a handle on the movie that he wanted to make because he wrote it, he envisioned it, Roger Deakins shot it, that when the movie was over, I was so moved. It was such, to me, and it was not a perfect, and when I say perfect, I mean it wasn't it wasn't totally faithful to the story. Nothing can be. But the essence of the story, it was so faithful to what that story was. I was so satisfied by it when I walked out, and it even didn't do very well at the box office. Now it's a beloved classic, but at the time, I felt this way with Endgame. I felt that, and again, is it the Shawshank Redemption? No, but it's not supposed to be. But what it was a superhero movie. It was the fourth Avengers movie. And I was so satisfied and so moved and so emotionally shook. And then my 8-year-old fanboy wanting to see superhero battles, that kid walked out with the biggest smile he could possibly have walked out of. I don't want to oversell this movie because there's already people like, oh, I was disappointed. Look, I can't help you. I can only give you what I thought of this film. And I was just happy that a middle-aged dude like myself with one foot in the grave can go see a movie like this and be made to feel the way I felt. I felt more than I thought I was going to feel. Just like I went saw Infinity War, just to give you a little. I didn't think Infinity War would be as good as it was as a pulp fever dream comic book adaptation of craziness. Is it the Infinity Gauntlet story that I read? And no, it's not exactly that. It certainly took it took inspiration from that. Like the Winter Soldier wasn't exactly like Ed Brubaker's run that I dearly loved, but they went in and used it. They informed themselves with that comic run, and I love the Winter Soldier, which, by the way, came out on 4K this week along with Civil War. Woohoo! And I've heard, according to thedigitalbits.com, that it is a substantial upgrade. So I am deliriously excited about seeing this movie again. I couldn't believe what it made me feel. I laughed. I cried. I thought, I was contemplative about it. There's some, I can't, I can't say it, but we'll have spoiler discussions about this on the John Campea show on Sunday. It's going to be great. But I want to read another letter from some people. And this one is it's a change of pace. But since I've been talking about emotion, I feel like this letter goes to my state of mind, how I feel about today, Endgame Day. And this comes from D. Copeland Patience, or some of you may know her on the chats on the Campea show, and here, DC Patience. Hi, Rob. I just wanted to say I'm really glad I got to meet you, although it's only online for now. I love hearing your thoughts and views about the movie industry and films. Your love really shines through, and it's contagious. I'm writing to say that, like your other followers, we're all handling tough issues in life, and it's nice to find havens of happiness like your channel. I like that, havens of happiness. For me, I've always struggled with depression and anxiety, especially after the loss of my mom in 2007. She was an anorexic, bulimic alcoholic with zero self-worth who attempted suicide several times. My brother found her body the first time, but she survived and lived another 10 years until I found her body the final time. People often don't think about who will find them when they commit suicide. It's not the image. It's the fact that they chose to take themselves out of your life and created a Russian roulette of who has to live with that image of their dead loved one. Mom missed my wedding in 2009, and she never met her brilliant and loving granddaughter, who's 8, who would give anything to hug her and hear stories about me when I was younger. I say all of this because the internet can be toxic, and I'm glad you're a beacon of positivity, even though trolls will try and bring you down. They'll call you names and try and make you feel bad because they aren't handling their own problems in life. Not sure why I'm saying all this, except to let you know that I have a great life now. It was hard work, but I have a great counselor, doctors, and other practitioners helping me with struggles I never knew I had. As a result, I'm able to give back to you and to John via Super Chats and Patreon because I'm in a better place with a great job, boss, husband, and family. Thank you for allowing us to share joy with you every day. Now, I didn't want to bring the mood down, but I really like that letter a lot, and I love stories of triumph, and I love stories of people who have found joy in their lives, and that's what this channel is supposed to be about. That's what you imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity, what we're hoping to do here is create a channel full of positivity, and that's, I think, what was great about Endgame. Is that it punched all my buttons. And I walked out of there with a gigantic smile on my face. I mean, it was sort of bittersweet for me because I was thinking about my friend Jon Schnepp, who's no longer here anymore. Nobody would have loved this movie more than Jon Schnepp would have. And we saw Infinity War together, and he passed away a few months later. I'm just happy you got to see that. But, this movie, it's a movie for our entire community. Now, I don't mean to oversell it. Some people, there are people that just will not buy into the idea of superheroes. I still see people online. People even tweet to me, "Oh, you get so excited about superhero movies when there's, people are dying in Sri Lanka and all over the world. People are starving to death." Look, that's true. That is true. And if I was going to think about everything wrong with the world all the time, I would crawl up in a fetal position into my bed, and I would never think about anything else. But life is tough, and we all have to deal with. All of us have to deal with our own problems, the problems that our friends and loved ones have. But that doesn't mean that joy should be elusive. And when something comes along for our community, like a movie like Endgame, I say embrace it. You don't go in there and like, show me what you got. Just open. You got to open your heart, man. You got to open your heart, open your imagination when you go see this movie. I guarantee you, it's going to start out, and I like Terry, man. It's cry time, as John Campy would say. There's a lot of emotion in this movie, unexpected emotion. I was unexpectedly, there was some emotion that happens even before the Marvel Studios logo comes up that I wasn't prepared for. John had speculated about something, and when it started, I'm like, oh, you'll see. And you'll be surprised, and it's not easy. But the movie, what just a delight. And I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say. To that end, I'd like to read another letter from someone new, I guess a new viewer, or maybe a longtime viewer who just sent me in a letter. This comes from Damian King. Damian says, "Dear Rob, after finishing Endgame, I need to talk about it, but there's no one in my social circle who's a fan. They just like watching movies, but they're not really into discussing them. My son is like me, but he's in a different town, and he'll be whooping it up with his university friends. So I'm scouring the internet, especially yours, and double toasted, waiting for spoiler talk. I believe I'm the same age as you. Listening to your shows since episode 75. My YouTube only recommended you then. You and I like so many similar shows and books. When you mentioned Joe Ledger, I whoop but finally find someone who loved the series. A new friend, I hope, from the island of Borneo." Well, Damien, first of all, it's always good to have a friend from the island of Borneo who knows the Joe Ledger series. For those of you who don't know what Damien is talking about, there is a series of books written by Jonathan Mayberry about a character named Joe Ledger and the department, the DMS, the Department of Military Science. And I adore this series of books. And basically the premise is Joe Ledger he was a former cop turned special agent. It's military dark fantasy is what it is. And the Department of DMS goes after alien threats. And what they do is, what Jonathan Mayberry brilliantly does is he takes all of the old horror tropes, whether it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, whether it's vampires, whether it's H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu and zombies, and he makes them very real world. And the Department of DMS, with this great sprawling cast of characters, great villains and antagonists, and they're great. And I've been reading the series since it first started. I think Patient Zero might have been the first book, which deals with zombies, but in a very interesting way. And they make everything realistic and down to earth. They even touch on alien technology and Cthulhu. And I love these books. So I'm glad to hear from you. You're just gonna have to wait a little while longer for some spoiler chat. I know people are already spoiling the movie. Probably someone jumped in here and spoiled it for anybody here. I'm sorry if they did that, but man, did I love this movie. And I think you guys will too. And I don't want to oversell it, because some people, I buy into this kind of thing. I still read my superhero comics. I love them. And a lot of people can't. You leave my mom, for instance. I love my mom, but my mom's never going to be able to watch a superhero movie and take it seriously, no matter how much world building they do. And there's a lot of people that I get it. But even Jeffrey Wells, a man that is very controversial as far as movie pundits go, even Jeffrey Wells, who I've been reading for 25 years, who always bags on superhero movies, even though he liked like Winter Soldier, he came out of this movie. I saw him going in on the Disney lot. I was on the Disney lot with John Campy, and when we came out of our screening, ours was like the second screening of the day. He was going in for the third screening of the day, and I was like, I wonder what he's going to say. And if you go to his website, HollywoodElsewhere.com, even he sort of reluctantly admitted how Endgame really worked. And as far as a popcorn fantasy, I mean, truly a magnificent ending to all 22 MCU films. But again, I don't know if you could call it, like I say, it exists in a vacuum, because it couldn't have existed. It couldn't be as effective as it was had we not had the previous 21 movies leading up to it. It really is their Return of the King. It really does. And I said this, and I'll be saying this. I coined this phrase, it stuck the landing the way the Eagle stuck Tranquility Base back on July 20th, 1969. The Eagle was the LEM, the Lunar Excursion Module that landed. The Eagle was the American spacecraft that landed on the moon for the very first time on July 20th, 1969. We're going to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of our first landing on the moon. And yes, people, we did land on the moon. Don't get me started. Anyway, again, what an email. That brings me to another what a movie. This is a long letter, but I haven't heard from this gentleman before. I assume it's a gentleman. This comes from DJ Mashburn. Robert, greetings to you, sir. Before I get to the point of my email, I'd like to start by saying thank you for coining the term imagination connoisseurs. And if by some chance you didn't coin it, well, who cares, because it's still awesome. Yes, I think I did. I think I made that up. I'd like to say imagination connoisseurs is my own conceit, because I think we needed something other than geek or nerd. And I think imagination connoisseurs is both highbrow and pretentious. And because I'm still the sanctimonious RMB, sanctimonious too, in a way. That said, if you'll grant me the time, let me tell you a bit about myself and my family. I'm a 29-year-old California kid at heart, working as a youth counselor in North Carolina. My father served nearly 30 years in the United States Marine Corps, and when it came time for him to retire a little over a decade ago, he decided to stay near Camp Lejeune and the beautiful beaches of the Carolina coast. Hence why I chose to stay here instead of returning to the West Coast when I came of age. Family is an extremely important part of my life. In fact, it's the most important. My dad and I have an amazing relationship, and that means a great deal to me. But I know it means more to him. You see, he was adopted as a baby and raised on the south side of Chicago in the 1960s by a disconnected and hard-nosed World War II veteran and an always overworked nurse. His childhood was nothing like mine. Where things always seemed great and easy for me, in large part because I had amazing parents who made it that way, things were rough and harder for him. He had to endure the very real ramifications of gentrification that aimed to drive crime and violence out of the city, but really just dropped it off at the doorstep of surrounding neighborhoods like his. Drugs, gangs, and the constant threat of something bad happening were the background of his youth. And as could be expected, this molded him into someone who was forced to become closed off and rough. There wasn't much time for creativity and exploration, and any free time he would have was dedicated to athletics. But even that was torn away from him when he lost his mother at 16 to breast cancer. Well, first of all, I relate to this because, as you know, probably, that I too was adopted, and my mother had 2 bouts of breast cancer when she was younger. She had 2 radical mastectomies, but she's still here. So at 18, he joined what he called the baddest gang in the land, the Marines. The Marine Corps offered him the opportunity to leave his old neighborhood and life behind and to see the world, but also the chance to make the best use of the intensity he had developed in his formative years, and he thrived. If we fast forward now to my childhood, I'll brag like so many others and say that I had the best dad ever. He really was the most supportive parent you could ask for, and I am so grateful for that. However, there was always a disconnect between the two of us when it came to creativity. The majority of our bonding was and still is shared via sports and competition, but not much was ever focused on talking about fantastical things outside of our mutually shared love of Star Wars. And as I got older and my own fascination with fantasy and science fiction grew, the more I felt I had no one to share these thoughts and interests with. I would then probably have been described as an athlete who got along with everyone, but didn't spend much time with the nerds because what they were into wasn't what was considered cool. I went as far as dubbing myself a closet nerd. How ridiculous is that? Probably not as ridiculous as many people in this chat might have you believe. And in retrospect, it all seems kind of silly and self-induced. But hey, I'm going to claim the whole product of my environment as an excuse for not being who I really wanted to be. Now, fast forward again to 2013. This was the year where, while browsing through the black hole that YouTube can be at times, I came across a show called AMC Movie Talk. I fell in love with the show and the format, but more importantly, with the reverence that they would discuss things that I was interested in with. The more that I watched the show, the more I began to think of the panelists as friends almost. I learned all about Campia and the others that had such admiration for what they were doing, but man, did I love me some Jon Schnepp. Schnepp owned and represented everything that I was introvertedly interested in. Over the years since then, I continued to follow the crew and eventually you. And it was growing clearer to me that Jon was someone I wished I'd been my whole life. While I'm certain that he dealt with his own set of issues, as we all do, he just came across as so confident in who he was and not being ashamed of owning the fact that he was a sweaty. And I fucking love that. For me, Jon made being a nerd or a sweaty or whatever you wanted to call it that you're interested in the coolest thing on the planet. And I fed off that. So while I'd never been a shy or unpopular person, I was now seeking out and connecting with new people who I wouldn't have before and discussing my long closeted thoughts and opinions of all of my favorite comic books, movies, and novels. I no longer felt like I needed to cover a James Lucerno book with Bill Simmons' The Book of Basketball so that friends or guests wouldn't judge me if they happened to see it. All of the new confidence in my now proud geek culture allowed me to start opening up with my dad about it as well. At first, it was baby steps, and I would often hear, I don't remember you ever being so interested in comic books, to now, where my dad is running at the speed of light and 100% invested in the MCU and looks at things with a new perspective. What 15 years ago would have been too nerdy for him is now something that he will text me about and ask if I've seen the new trailer or read the new theory on, and I love it. I finally feel I can be my truest self with the person who means most to me in the world, and I attribute that to people like you, Robert, and most importantly, to Jon. I'm certain that you receive messages all the time from people about their own stories, so I hope that you truly do take notice and pat yourself on the back for what you and others like Jon and in our world of geek culture mean to the audience. You are both appreciated and needed in this world, if for nothing else than to help pick others up and show them how to shine on their own. With that, I wanted to say one final thing. When Jon passed on last year, I was devastated. I was in DC for a family friend's retirement and fortunately was in my hotel room at the time when I read the news. I was a complete mess, and I was so thankful to have my girlfriend there with me to get through it. While I never knew Jon personally, he really did mean the world to me, and with Endgame releasing this weekend, it pains me to know that I'm not going to hear his review and thoughts on just how sweaty it was for him. With that, I wanted to make sure that he was remembered and represented, so with Holly's permission, I had a custom shirt made to wear on opening night Thursday evening. I'll attach or send a picture of it to you on Twitter so you can check it out. Thanks for all the time and all that you do, DJ. Rest in peace to the king of the sweaties. Well, I have to tell you, that made me when I first read it, DJ. I got teared up over that, and I want to thank you for that wonderful remembrance. But you know, it brings up something that I keep hearing from people. I hear so many times. I hear the same story about how they were closet geeks. And they remained, you know, they had to remain closet. But what a great thing to now be able to share these things with your father, and you guys are texting your excitement about the MCU. See, I kind of, my interest in all this stuff happened when I was a kid, you know, and I was the only kid interested in all this stuff. Like I was watching Star Trek when I was 5 and The Twilight Zone and UFO, and I was really into it. And it led me to reading books. And then when Star Wars came out, everybody loved Star Wars. So I was already, by the time I was 10 years old, I was a total dyed-in-the-wool geek. I was a member of the science fiction book club. I still to this day, I'm building spaceship models and model rockets. And I was an unabashed geek, but I also was a really social kid. I mean, I liked girls from a very young age and had girlfriends from a very young age. But to me, so I kind of, I was in the middle of both of these worlds, but I never hid who I was. I mean, I had friends that weren't interested in it. I mean, I had more when Star Wars came out because every kid was interested in Star Wars, but they didn't internalize it. They didn't pour over the Star Wars sketchbook or anything like that. So when people started calling me nerd, it was when I started to get older, like when I got into junior high school. I remember once there was a guy named Brad Koval who kind of lived in my neighborhood, and he was a 9th grader and I was a 7th grader. And when I got into when I went to see Star Trek the Motion Picture when I was in 7th grade, I wore basically a Star Trek uniform to school, a jacket. Actually, it was a shirt. I had two things. I had a Star Trek shirt, and then I had this jacket. I had a Star Trek jacket I'd got when I was much younger. And then I had a Star Trek shirt. And I was taking the girls' bathroom, and I got beat up by Mike Elfendahl. But it wasn't until I got into junior high that people called me names, or made fun of me. But it was okay because it didn't last very long, because I was the kid that I had a VCR, and I was always having people over at my house and showing them R-rated movies. So they got to see Alien and Animal House. I got in a little trouble for it, but kids, I didn't have really a problem. People knew I was really into it, but I also was, social and was outgoing. So I didn't have much of a problem. But there was one time, this guy named Brad Koval, it was like a showdown. Like, he was yelling at me. I was in 7th grade. He was in 9th grade. And he was, making fun of me, I think by the foosball tables or something. And, people were around like we were going to fight. And I got picked on, but I would fight back. Like, if this guy, Jeff Rice, whose dad was an orthodontist, he once dumped his spaghetti in my lap. Like, I was wearing a cloth members only jacket. It was just a mess. But I went over and picked up the spaghetti and I threw it at him. And I got beat up after school, but still, I had a big mouth. And I tried not to put up with any shit. But Brad Koval, I think this is where the tide turned. He was like, you, like, he'd been throwing out some pretty lame insults, but then he got tongue-tied and finally said, you Star Wars freako. And rather than everybody laughed. Like, the people that had gathered, the 9th graders, the upperclassmen, laughed their asses off, and they were just pointing to Brad Koval, like, Star Wars freako, Brad, that's the best you could do. And then no one really was, they didn't give me a lot of shit after that. But so I was lucky. I didn't have to be a closet nerd. But I get so many stories from everybody that were. And I keep hearing these stories about how, and the people that usually are here that stick around for these chats really are people that are like me. We've all come out of the closet, our nerd closet, or whatever other closet we are in. And I love all this stuff. I loved it since I was a little kid. Nothing has changed. And I think that if people can genuinely feel my enthusiasm, they can. And that's why I love Endgame. It's a lifelong thing. Look, I have not looked at anybody's questions. Normally I look at people's questions. I'm going to go, why don't we start looking? Let me look at questions and see what I've got here, and start reading your questions, because why not? Why not do that? So let me do that. Let's do that on this Endgame. Let's start reading your questions. That's normally what I do. I usually get to them before this, but I've been reading a lot of letters. I want to thank you, by the way, for the people that do send in super chats. That's you support the channel, support me. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. Let's start with, what do we got here? Movie Fanobi is here. He's a longtime viewer. Thank you for being here. Hey, Rob, I'm going to see Endgame with the sister in less than 2 hours. Can't wait. We'll check you out later. Hello, all. Seeing Friday, taking mom Sunday. That's what I like to hear. 3 times in a weekend. Movie Fanobi says, Alien turns 40 on 4/26. Amazing. I'm old. I was 6. Laugh out loud. It's funny you say that, because for those, this is Alien, the new 4K restoration. It has both the director's cut. This just came out. It's like $14 at Amazon. The transfer is stunning. I didn't realize that 4/26 was the release date. I'm old. I was 6. I don't even want to tell you how old I was. I feel bad because my grandfather, since you brought up Alien, I took advantage of my grandfather. And I'm going to admit this now. My grandfather passed away at 97 back in 2008. But I loved him. And it was after my grandmother died. And he was alone. And I went out with him every weekend. And he asked me once, he was like, Rob, Bobby, call me Bobby or Bob. What do you want to do this weekend? And nobody would take me to see Alien because I was young and it was rated R. So I said to my grandfather, I'm like, hey, Grandpa, there's a science fiction movie, called Alien. Can we go? and I feel terrible. I do. My grandfather took me to see Alien, me and my little sister, and I didn't know what I was in for. Like everyone else, again, like Endgame, the movie Alien, Endgame is not a slow burn. It really isn't. You're involved from moment one. It moves. I think it's incredibly well paced, but it's a very emotional journey at first. And Alien terrified me. I mean, just the panning of the camera, and the opening credit where the word alien appears slowly on the screen, and you see it in a Nostromo, and the camera's panning around this empty ship. I was already terrified. So good on my grandfather for taking me. By the time the chest burster emerged from Kane's chest, I was so scared, but I couldn't let him know. He was very stoic the whole time. And when it was over, I said, well, Grandpa, what'd you think of that? And he's like, that was pretty good. That's all he said. Anyway, Terry Flynn is here. Terry Flynn, who wrote that great letter. Terry Flynn says, Rob, I missed the start, but thanks. Vesna said you read my letter. You rock. I cried today. Endgame blew me away. Me too, son. Me too. I can't wait to go see it again. Ewan Fitzhugh, I think it's Ewan. Ewan Fitzhugh is here. Thank you, Ewan. Says, loved Endgame, favorite Avengers film, second favorite MCU movie. Well, that is a very good thing. Jim Boyers is here, the great Jim. He's a longtime viewer. Thank you for the support, Jim. Jim says, my son just surprised me with Endgame tickets for 11:30 tonight. Also get to see it tomorrow with my grandson, Braden, for his birthday surprise from me. Yay. All right, Jim, how great is it? I mean, you got 3 generations of your family. Your son surprised you. You're surprising your grandfather. You're all going to Endgame. This is what the MCU is all about. I mean, I think we can't forget. How great is this? I mean, and by the way, I've always been talking about how this is what happened to fandom. You know, fandom has become multi-generational. When I was growing up, I'd go to these comic book conventions by myself, and it'd be me and a bunch of dudes, flipping through long boxes, or later when I would find import. The first Comic-Con, the first San Diego Comic-Con I went to was in 1988, and I bought, in the way I remembered, I could be off a year, but I went to the 88 convention, but I remember buying Akira on Japanese Laserdisc at my first Comic-Con. I think I might have bought it. I think it's 88, but I don't know when the Laserdisc actually came out. I know Akira came out in 88, but isn't it great? You go to Comic-Con now. I mean, there's as many girls as there are guys, and there's multi-generations. You got grandparents, you got parents, you got kids. I mean, it's fantastic. That's what fandom is all about. You got 2 generations going in 24 hours to see Avengers Endgame, Jim. How cool is that? As far as I'm concerned, that's very cool, my friend. Tell me, I want to hear how your grandkids think or your grandchild thinks about it. Report back. Willow Yang says, I swear, I think Endgame has just made you many years younger. How many times are you planning on watching it in theaters? Well, at least 3 this week. At least 3. I think I saw Infinity War like 5 or 6 times. But yeah, I mean, the first time I see a movie like this, I'm just letting it wash over me. I can't even sit back and really, because I'm half like sitting forward. I'm like, I can't, like, what's going on? And this movie, I teared up a number of times, and I actually cried a few, just involuntary, and it was funny. I'm in a room full of my peers and other YouTube stars and people I admire and people I know. And I had to look around. We were sitting toward the front, which is good. I didn't want anyone to see me because everyone's looking at the screen, so no one's paying attention. But I was dabbing tears away. It was a little embarrassing, to be honest. Chinese Deadpool is here. Just finished my second viewing of Endgame. When the movie reached a certain point, I couldn't control my tears. That moment was too great. I can't believe I saw that. Yes, there are many moments. There are many moments in this movie. And I know that's why all the spoiler. What I find so insidious about spoilers is, for this particular movie, there's just so many great little moments and time that they're just so enjoyable. And when people put them in without context, I think I call that's genre terrorism. It's fan terrorism. Why do you guys got to do that? It's beyond trolling. I mean, I call these people destroyers of joy, and they are. If that's what they're going to do, fine. But why do that? Like, you could wallow in the anticipation. I'm certainly enjoying it. I'm like, I anticipated this movie for months. It did not disappoint. I'm anticipating it now 2 days later. The whole experience is going to be different because I'm going to be sitting in a gigantic theater of fans that aren't going, okay, show me what you got. There are people that want to be there, that are excited to be there. Can't wait to see what happens. By the way, I cannot stress enough, there's really no time to go to the bathroom in this movie. So be prepared. Sighing Cassandra sent me a super chat. Thank you, Sighing. By the way, Sighing Cassandra, what a great name. Sighing Cassandra said, thanks for the non-spoiler chat. We'll now be watching without the chat, seeing it only tomorrow. Keep up the good work. Well, Sighing Cassandra, I love that you are, in fact, Sighing Cassandra, because that is a really cool thing to be. I love that. Sighing Cassandra. That's really fun. David Cabrera is here. David, I love this. I love this. I can feel the anticipation. How great is this? David Cabrera is here. He says, R&B, I'm seeing Avengers Endgame in 1 hour. And then again at 10 p.m. and tomorrow at 11 p.m. and Saturday at 4 a.m. All sold out shows. My inner child is about to jump out of my chest, and I am 47. David, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. That is so good. See, that's what I'm talking about. Isn't that great that this genre community can be brought together like this? This kind of excitement is here. I mean, it's fantastic. It's intoxicating. I love it. It's so great to hear this. It's just great. Darth Suthius is here. He says, hey, Mr. B, with all seriousness, I think you and Mr. Campia should make a movie together. He could produce and you could direct, and why not cast Ashley? I'm all for that. Always looking for funding. As many of you know, I'm finishing up. We're in the middle of the final stages of post-production on a feature film I'm producing called Tango Shalom that I also edited and am the post supervisor on. We're in the middle of color timing. The sound design team has the movie for designing the sound. And so that's happening. And yeah, so that's great. Alex Meyer is here, and he says, I am friends with Doshi. He says he misses you all. Well, that brings me to, in fact, another letter that I would like to read. As many of you who have been here, you've seen an active member of this community, an active member of these chats, Doshi. I actually liked his little avatar. It was cute. Doshi was in the hospital. He said he was in the hospital. I believe it's a he. Was in the hospital. He'd gone into the hospital. He found out that he had leukemia. I guess it is pretty bad because he wonders if he's going to be here to see Star Wars Episode 9. But I always loved hearing from Doshi. He was very funny and very sweet, and he was always supportive, sending me super chats. I received a letter from Doshi, and I would like to read it. Hello, Robert. Doshi here. I finally wanted to send you a letter, and you can read it on air. So I just want to start by saying I thank you so much for all the kind words and support you have given me these last few days. It helps me to stay strong. I will beat leukemia because, in the words of the great master Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. Anyways, I also want to say if something does happen to me and I'm no longer around, I hope you all enjoy Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Remember, it's just a movie, so all this argument between each other seems pretty small to me, because a great man once said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. I know who that great man was. That man was Ferris Bueller. I also want to thank everyone in the chat who is wishing me luck and praying for me. I want to thank John Campia and Ashley. They have made each day less painful when I watch the show. And of course, once again, I want to thank you, Rob. As a child, I loved movies and comic books. So finding a channel where others enjoy the same passion as I do, it really puts a smile on my face. I remember seeing X-Men for the first time and being blown away. Then we got Spider-Man. It reached a new level of awesomeness. Then in 2008, the MCU started with Iron Man, and it changed my love of comic book films even more and made me the man I am today. I love listening to different people's opinions on the good and the bad. I will also never forget my first time seeing The Dark Knight with a packed theater, hoping Heath Ledger can pull off the Joker. And he did. Again, blew my mind. So now, skip to 2019, and we're getting Avengers Endgame. I'm hoping to see it soon. I never understood fandom who trash on superhero films. Well, except maybe Catwoman. That movie was garbage. But I will admit, I am a major Marvel fanboy, but I just enjoy seeing different kinds of superhero films. DC, Marvel, they're both great in their own way. I'm hoping when I fight this battle, I can start my own YouTube channel and share my thoughts because I feel I have a lot to say. If anything to take from this letter, it's this: enjoy life, because we live in a world of such great movies that as a kid, I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. I'm hoping this letter gives you all appreciation of how short life is. May you all enjoy Endgame, and please don't be a dick and spoil it for others. May the Force be strong in all of you, and thank you so much for all the love you've given me. Doshi. Well, again, I can't see, for me, getting letters like Doshi's. I mean, he was here almost every day participating in these chats, and you just think, you never think that, oh, we're here talking about our favorite things. I say the imagination connoisseurs, the Post-Geek Singularity. And now today I've read articles or letters from you guys remembering Jon Schnepp, and now from Doshi himself, who doesn't even know if he's going to be here to see Rise of Skywalker. I mean, I've been lucky in that I've lived a fairly healthy life. I've had a great life. I've known some great people, a lot of great people, and some people I've known aren't here anymore, like Jon Schnepp. And it's heartbreaking to read, because even Doshi's avatar picture made me smile. And to think that, I really hope that somebody takes him out into the theater to see Endgame, because I think that'll be good for his soul. So, Doshi, here's to you, man. Thank you for sending me that letter, and I think everybody who is here, all of this, these members of the Post-Geek Singularity are pulling for you. And if you can come back, love to hear you in the chat, and we will be thinking of you always. And keep up that fight. Don't give up. Like I said, my friend Mike Schertz was diagnosed with 2 bouts of what they told him was terminal leukemia, and he survived. So please keep your chin up and fight the good fight. So yeah. Here's another letter. And this comes from Ben Lorenowitz. Rob, love your show. Love your presence on the John Campea show. I have a psychology question. They say it is common experience to feel somewhat depressed after accomplishing a major life goal: marriage, buying a home, job promotion, yes, graduating college, etc. They say that because a motivating force, is no longer part of your life. It's the pursuit of that goal. Do you think us Marvel fans will experience similar feelings about Endgame? After the hype and joy of the movie dies down, will we also experience a post-high funk? Like, now what? Just curious to hear your thoughts. Seeing Endgame this coming Saturday, I'm so excited. Well, that's an interesting question, Ben, because when we saw Endgame, and from what I understand from around the West of the world, there are no, as we all know, Marvel Cinematic Universe movies have end credit tags, different scenes. Sometimes there's 1, 2, 3. There were no end credit scenes in this film. As people have talked about, there's some strange audio thing at the very end. Don't know what it is, very nebulous, but there were no end scenes. And there was a sense, after sitting through the credits, everybody wondered whether there was a post-credit scene. There is not, unless they snuck one on. But sometimes when they showed movies to the press, they don't put those end credit screens or end credit scenes in, so they don't get spoiled. But there was a sense of finality to this movie on a number of different levels, that we had seen the end. The same way when Frodo went off into the Grey Havens with the elves, and you hear Annie Lennox singing "Into the West." I mean, and when she unleashes during that song, I mean, my God, how can you not feel that sense of closure? And I think that's great. Life is all about beginnings and endings. But we know Spider-Man Far From Home is coming out. I'm really curious, and you will be too, how they deal with certain elements of Spider-Man Far From Home after this movie's over. It's very interesting. Not something I didn't consider. Another reason why I loved Endgame, because there's another moment where I'm like, oh, what does that mean? And it was very interesting. You'll see. And I don't know. We know they're going to continue making movies. How they're going to continue making movies, I don't know. There's ramifications, obviously, that are going to echo through eternity. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but a sense of finality, I didn't feel depressed at all. I felt elated. I felt so good coming out of this movie. I felt like, oh my God. I felt, again, the author knew what we wanted. They gave us what we wanted. And the fact that there are so many moving parts in this movie. There's so dare I say this movie is a marvel? I mean, it really is. It is a marvel that it even exists. And just really, really, really loved it. Yeah. Let's see. Alex Meyer is here. Sorry to tell you, everyone, Doshi is still in the hospital. Well, Alex, I wanted to read that letter. I'm his close friend, and I'm at work, and I worry about him too. I think we've got his back. So, here's to Doshi. I don't have any beverage in front of me, but I would be drinking to him. Vesna says she was never in the closet. I don't like small, dark places. Jennifer Jones says, it kind of has to be closeted. I assume you're talking about geekdom. It was okay as a kid, but a teenage girl wasn't allowed to like that stuff. In my day, jocks were cool and nerds weren't, period. Yeah, but I think that's changed. I really noticed that where I saw it changing was the rise of anime and things like Sailor Moon and video games. Girls got into the community. I've talked a lot about how the Sandman, I saw a lot more girls coming into comic book stores after the Sandman debuted. I think I was going to do this documentary that they put the kibosh on. I had Neil Gaiman's approval about Sandman for its 25th anniversary. And I wanted to incorporate like the rise of Hot Topic and goth culture and how Emily the Strange and Death and how all that brought women into genre culture more so than ever. Yeah, I don't know. Bunyan Snipe says, speaking of that, does Holly still have issues with the huge medical bills regarding John? I do not know. Aaron Johnson says, Rob, I was shocked that Mouse Guard got canceled by Disney. I am hoping that another studio picks it up like Sony or Universal. Really expensive project. For those who didn't know, Mouse Guard, based on the beautiful comic series, beautiful graphic novel series, got pulled. They canceled it. It was going to be a $170 million Fox film, motion capture. Andy Serkis was involved. Idris Elba was involved. I don't think it really fit into Disney's plans. And like we were talking about on the John Campea show, there's going to be a lot, not just people that lost their jobs, but film projects that were Fox projects that aren't going to happen because Disney just spent $70 billion. And I think with if I was Bob Iger and I was running Disney, I would make sure that the movies that we would still be putting out under the Fox banner would be movies like Deadpool. 2 movies made $1.5 billion. You can justify that to shareholders and even people who might scream, kids like Deadpool, and those movies are R-rated. Bob Iger's like, shareholders, we just spent $70 billion on Fox. This movie can return $750 million to $1 billion. We're going to keep making these movies. Even shareholders are going to say, okay, Fox cannot afford if they're going to put out movies still. And by Emma Watts' own admission, they still are under the Disney regime. They have to make movies that sell. They can't make movies that might not sell. So you're going to see venerable properties that have proved their worth in the past. Maybe the Alien franchise will continue. Who knows? Clarissa, 35 female, says, I remember when I joined the science fiction book club, I got the first 3 books for $1. Totally. The Foundation trilogy by Asimov, Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey, and The Magic of Xanth by Piers Anthony. I, too, got the Dragon Riders of Pern and the Foundation trilogy. I also got the Sword of Shannara. I loved the science fiction book club. I had hundreds of science fiction book club books when my parents actually got separated. They were I had to move all my books. And when my mom sold our house, I was in college before I moved to California. In Seattle, a pipe burst and doused all of my science fiction book club books, hundreds of them. All the great canonical science fiction works, the great canon of sci-fi. I read them all. They all got mildewy and I had to throw them all away. It was horrifying. Terrible. Terry Flynn says, God, I am so dying to talk Endgame with my friends in here. Well, you will, Terry, but just not today. But you will. I promise. We will. We will talk Endgame. We will have a big spoiler discussion, big bad spoiler discussion we will see, and we will do that. Darth Suthius says, there are a lot of people who have way too much free time who should go outside and get some fresh air or rub one out, relieve some stress or something. Man, I agree. I mean, why are you spoiling something for other people? I don't get it. And, rubbing one out, never a bad idea. It's helpful. Brian Acevedo says, 4 years after one of my friends ruined a Jon Snow season 5 scene for another one of my friends, he returned the favor and spoiled Endgame for him. Cruel or fair? Here's the thing. As James Bond said in The Spy Who Loved Me, before seeking revenge, you must first dig 2 graves. It's also kind of what I always tell my friends on the progressive left. You cannot replace one oppression with another. Never a good thing. All the people that are finally getting their say cannot then turn around and oppress their oppressors. That doesn't work either. We all have to move forward together. I don't think it's great. So you come back and, you seek revenge years later. It's never going to work out for you. And if it was season 5, it's like you've been sitting on that for 4 years now or whatever. That just eats you up inside. It's just forgive and move forward. And why spoil Endgame? I don't know. Just Plain Steve is here. Says, I've done it, Rob. I see Endgame in less than 2 hours and have stayed 100% spoiler free. I've got 3 showings in the next 3 days. # prayers for Doshi. Well, Just Plain Steve, you're a great member of this community. I can't wait to hear what you think, because how awesome is that? Dax Jacobson says, I'm only glad that happened, so someday you would want to make a movie like Free Enterprise. Dude, I've got so many movies I want to make, and I've been working on other people's movies. It was funny. I made The Hills Run Red, produced that. We got it out, and then after that, I tried to get Free Enterprise 2 made. We lost our funding 2 days before principal photography, which was one of the most painful experiences of my life. But then Mark Altman sold Femme Fatales to HBO, which we got to make for HBO Cinemax. So I directed 5 episodes of that show. Then when I was done on that show, I got the Star Trek job where I was making all the documentaries for the Blu-rays, which is, let's face it, one of the greatest jobs ever. Then after that, I started editing feature films. I edited a low-budget sci-fi thriller called Paradox that's on Netflix. Not that like Western Paradox, but it's low-budget sci-fi. Find it buried. I think it's still on Netflix. Did that. Then I edited a movie for Lifetime called I Know Where Lizzie Is. And now I've been working on Tango Shalom for almost 3 years. I'm producing Tango Shalom. Well, I produced it. Now I finished editing it. Now we're in the final stages of post. Maybe it'll get into a film festival. Maybe it won't. Who knows? Anyway, finishing up. Hope to show it to all of you. Let's see. Pleasant Valley Picker Canada says Willow Yang, Devil in the Dark, and what most consider the best episode, City on the Edge of Forever. These are all in season 1. They are. You're talking the original series. I can't wait to read Willow Yang's final assessment when she finishes the first season of the original series. That's going to be great. Let's see. Clarissa 35 female says, Jennifer Jones, I started with Legion of Superheroes. I liked all the skimpy superheroine costumes, moved to the Flash, Green Lantern, but then discovered the X-Men. I like the superhero skimpy costumes in Legion too. Saturn Girl is my jam. Oh, Alex Mayer says, I'm a girl. I didn't know that, Alex. That's good to know you're a girl. In this day and age, that doesn't mean anything either, though. You never want anybody to feel bad because you've misgendered them or dead named them. I try not to do that whenever I can. Rakan Man 85 says, hey, Rob, I just bought Alien on 4K. Gonna wait on the early Marvel movies because I heard the Atmos mix leaves much to be desired. I already have the 3D. Has it? I don't know. I heard the picture was, I heard the sound on the 4K Civil War and Captain America Winter Soldier discs were pretty good. There is a review of those on the Digital Bits. The 2 places, by the way, for those who still collect digital media, go to the digitalbits.com or DVD Beaver. Those are the 2 places I go. And also Blu-ray.com. I read their reviews as well. Darth Suthius asks, have you seen Gundam Barbados? I have not. If so, your thoughts and would you recommend? I'm not a fan of chicken legs design on mechs and robots. I don't like chicken leg designs on mechs or robots either. The only one I did like was the Scout Walker. There was something about that, maybe because it was called the Chicken Walker. So I would dig that. But I I'm not particularly fond of that either. I like beefy. I like my mecha beefy. Jessica Tennis is here. Jessica, how are you? Will you be going to the DS9 documentary in May? Yes, Jessica, I will. That is, of course, the documentary What We Leave Behind. It's a documentary that was Ira Stephen Bear, who was brought on board. Well, he came onto the third season of Next Gen, but then he was brought on Deep Space Nine to sort of fix it. Did a great job and turned it into what it is. I can't wait to see the documentary. Yeah, I'll be going to see it. I pre-ordered the Blu-ray from Shout, and I'll go see it in the theater. I think it's like May 8th or something. Murray Reich is here. Says anyone that posts Endgame spoilers should be locked in a dark room and be subjected to watching Howard the Duck, Battlefield Earth, and The Room, whatever it takes. I don't disagree with you. Rakan Man says, I feel like Disney half-asses their audio mixes. Well, Rakan Man 85, I think you're right about that, to be honest. I think Disney is slowly but surely trying to wean us off of physical media. As much as I still love physical media, as you can see, I mean, Alien, $15, 4K Alien, 2 versions for $15. I couldn't get the Steelbook because I wasn't quick enough on the uptake. It was at Best Buy. I don't normally collect Steelbooks, but on a standalone movie like Alien that I dearly, dearly love, I would love to have been able to get that Steelbook. I just wasn't fast enough. I wanted to get the Steelbooks for Civil War and Captain Marvel or Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but again, I didn't buy them. So I just got the regular one. I got the regular Alien. Uncle Remus says, yep, Gotham series finale and Orville season finale is tonight. Fox should have saved them for next week. They probably should have. But, in this day and age, everybody can finally catch up with that stuff. John Suntrese is here from the Word Balloon podcast. John says the Orville has been really great, finding its footing in the second season. I agree. Unlike another space show that just wrapped up its season 2. John, buddy, what do you mean? No idea what you're talking about. Of course, John, he's the impresario behind the great Word Balloon podcast. If you guys like comic books and pop culture, the Word Balloon podcast is a long-running podcast. You should check it out. If I can also plug Best Movie, Worst Movie, the podcast Cody Miller and John Campia and I do. I think the new episode is out wherever podcasts are available. Or the other podcast I do periodically is the Inglorious Trexperts. Check that out. This last episode I was not on, but Mike Sussman and Lisa Klink were on discussing Star Trek Voyager. So that is a good thing. Donnie Pearson says, I am so glad that Disney will still release Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story under its 20th Century Fox banner. Thanks, Disney and 20th. I agree. You know why, Donnie? Because when you're a jet all the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day, right? I love West Side Story. It's one of my favorite movies. I've seen it in 70 millimeter like 6 times. I can't wait to see what Spielberg does with it. I've heard there's now controversy that nobody wants people to smoke in West Side Story. So funny. I mean, you can't have people smoking on a period piece. It's so weird. Like, yeah, kids are going to pick it up because it's cool again. I mean, come on, smoking. It's so 20th century. People are vaping now. But yeah, I think that's so weird. Let's see. Willow Yang says, from my understanding, they were supposed to do reshoots and they never got around to them. I have doubts it'll ever be released, at least theatrically. You must be talking about New Mutants, which might never see the light of day, which is really too bad. Joseph Arak is here. Joseph, by the way, sent me a video, which is pretty awesome. I'm probably going to put a link to it on the Burnettwork page so everyone can see it. Joseph, thank you for that video. I want to put it up. As a matter of fact, you know what? Why don't I? I'll just put a link. You'll be able to see Joseph's video. It's very great. I want to thank you for that. Let's see. The Blue Corner says, yes or no answer. Were you happy with Lee's cameo? Was I happy with Stan Lee's cameo in Endgame? Not going to say. I'll leave it up to you. Everyone knows there's a Stan Lee cameo in Endgame. It was reported. They've said it's his last cameo, but I'm not going to say what I thought about it. Victor Acosta says, Rob, can Endgame beat Force Awakens first weekend gross? I think it's going to come damn close. I don't know what the actual numbers are on Force Awakens, but it definitely could. I think because of the reason I was talking about why I love this movie is because it is so emotionally involving. It's different than a comic book movie. I think non-comic book fans that go see this movie, or non-MCU fans that get dragged, or casual MCU fans, are going to be surprised at how emotional this movie really is, and how dramatic it is, and how it takes its time and getting you involved. Jonathan Peck asks a great question. Did you talk about Bond 25? No, I didn't, but boy, should I. So they had a press conference. Normally, they've always had Bond press conferences all the way back into the 60s. And they had their press conference today where they sort of explain what's going on. They did not release the title of Bond 25, which is annoying me. I need to know what it's called. The only title they've had associated with this movie was Shatterhand, which was an alias that Blofeld took in a previous Bond story that Fleming wrote. But they're saying that's not the name. Rami Malek has been introduced as, I guess, the villain. Leah Seydoux comes back from Spectre. I don't think anybody should come back from Spectre, but Leah Seydoux can do no wrong. If you people haven't seen one of my favorite comic adaptations of all time, a movie that just devastates me, and not just because of the lesbian sex scenes, is Blue is the Warmest Color. It's one of the most devastating relationship movies I've ever seen. That movie really got to me. Great Criterion Blu-ray, but it's based on a graphic novel. Check that out. Leah Seydoux is incredible in that. I thought she was great. She comes back as Madeline Swan again from Spectre. Very excited. I'm very excited for Bond 25. I will be going to England. It opens next April. What I have to find out is, does it open 2 weeks in the UK in advance of its time opening worldwide? Because if it does open worldwide, there's no reason to go to England. The reason that I went to see Skyfall in England is because it opened 2 weeks in advance of the rest of the world, and I wanted to see it with Bond fanatics in London. It was the 50th anniversary Bond film. I went to the Odeon Theater in Leicester Square. It was awesome. I want to do the same thing, but if it opens day and date worldwide, I'm not going to do it. I'll save my money. But you know what? Everyone's welcome to join me, because once you go to England to say you saw a James Bond movie, just because, you can always say you went to England to see a James Bond movie just because it's a Robservations field trip. I had my friend Terrence and his girlfriend came down from Norway. It was awesome. Charlie de Lazarica came out there. It was great. David Tapia is here. Thoughts on Ken Watanabe and the remake of The Fugitive? Oh, is that true? I haven't even heard that. Of course, The Fugitive, Harrison Ford's Fugitive, directed by Andrew Davis, was a remake of the great TV show. It was David Jansen, right? David Jansen, The Fugitive. I love that idea. Ken Watanabe, he can do no wrong. I love him. He's amazing. Bring it on. Love it. Haven't heard that. Is that new news? See, I've been doing this all morning. I've been on I don't know. Darth Suthius says, speaking of Mr. Schnepp, I remember the first day he was on AMC Movie Talk. I thought, who is this creepy looking guy lurking about in a dim lit room? Little did I know he'd become my favorite person in the next 6 years. Yeah, Schnepp. If you guys don't know the great Jon Schnepp, he was such a great presence. He towered above me. And I'm a pretty big guy. He was like 6'5". I'm 6'1". John towered above me. He was one of a kind, man. And he was so supportive. And the thing Jon Schnepp liked the most was the creativity of other people. He really thrived on that. And man, when I saw Endgame, Markia and we did a little video on the Disney lot. I tweeted it out. You can find it. She did a video when the three of us were doing videos. The three of us walked out of Infinity War together on Hollywood Boulevard, and we made videos. And Markia, she and I did the same thing coming out of Endgame in honor of Jon Schnepp. So check that video out. I thought that was pretty cool. Brian Stanford says, not going to be able to see this movie until Monday or Tuesday. Babysitter got sick. This will be an unbearable 4 days. You have no idea. Stay off the internet. Turn it off. Turn off your phone. Turn off anything. You got to stay off. You got to go in. Got to go in spoiler free. Greg Smith's here. Arg, my family is gone for the next 3 weekends. I don't want to see Endgame without my daughter. But if it gets spoiled for me, there will be blood. Dude, just go anyway and tell your lie. Say you didn't see it. No, I know. You're a good dad. You wouldn't do that. Maurice D says, Endgame this Saturday, Game of Thrones on Sunday. I think I may spontaneously combust. You will. You will spontaneously. I mean, we're not just getting Thrones this weekend. We're getting the Battle of frickin' Winterfell this weekend. I mean, Endgame, Battle of Winterfell. Both movies about what? The end of the universe? Who knows? Jared McBride says, hello, Rob. Could Avengers Endgame pass Avatar or Titanic in the box office? I think it has a shot of passing Titanic. I really do. Because of its emotional content. I think people are going to go back again and again and again. It's so satisfying. It's just so satisfying. I mean, I've seen the movie and I can't wait to see it again. Dr. Emilio Lizardo, any Buckaroo Banzai reference is a good one. Go to London, Robservations International. Man, if I go to London, I want to do Robservation Nation. I will do Robservations International. Maybe I'll rent out a theater myself. I'll show Free Enterprise and do a night or a talk or something. We can do this live and broadcast it live on the internet. Clarissa says, Robert, Clarissa is fine. No need to go all Clarissa 35 female. Laugh out loud. I will not do that, Clarissa. Now that I know, I don't know. I just read but since you've told me, see, I believe I'm a person who does believe in whatever you want to be called. You should be called that, regardless. I don't think that's a problem, as long as it's not compelled by the state. So, Clarissa, you are Clarissa from now on. Vesna says, England will not allow me to enter the country. I'm on the blacklist. Ha, ha, ha. Wait, you can't just drop something like that and not tell us why. Why, Vesna? What did you do? What did you do? Did you try and sneak a Serbian film into the country without it going through proper channels? Is that what you did? Kid A says, hey, Rob, without spoiling anything, do you think it's worth getting the Hot Toys Mark 85? Okay, what Kid A is asking for is it worth it getting the Mark 85 that you see in the film? I believe it's the Mark 50. I pre-ordered the Mark 50, the Infinity War Mark 50. God, I hope I can afford it when it finally drops in the States. I don't know. I mean, it's a cool. I really like the Infinity War armor, the Tony Stark armor. But if you don't have that, but here's what I objected to. For those of you who don't collect Hot Toys figures, Hot Toys Iron Man armor have always been sort of the creme de la creme of Hot Toys, and then they moved over to making their Iron Man armor die cast. So you're looking at $450 for a figure, but the engineering, like you'll see, but right behind me, I have what has been my favorite armor, which was the Age of Ultron armor. I haven't bought Iron Man armor since Age of Ultron, which was a die cast. They re-released it recently, and I'm dying to get the Infinity War armor. I love it, but to keep the costs down, you buy the armor, you buy that figure, and then you have to spend $250 for the accessories, so you can get that big engine that he used to get up to Ebony Maw's ship and stuff. Alex Meyer says, I'm a girl, Rob. I knew you. I saw that. You're taking Doshi to Endgame tomorrow. Oh my God. Do me a favor. If you've got a smartphone that has video, I'd love to see the two of you. If you could make me a video and send it to me or tweet it to me or something, I'd love to see a reaction video from you guys and girl and you guy when you come out. That would be great. I want to share it with the team here to share it with the Post-Geek Singularity community. Mike McComb says, on the sci-fi topic in Endgame that you and John had different thoughts about, did you like the way that they pulled it off, or did you not like how they did it? Can I answer that question? I'm just going to say I really liked it, but I have questions. I have questions. I have, aside from how much I like this movie, there is a sci-fi trope that they make use of that usually requires rules, and there are rules behind it in the film. They establish rules, and I want to go back and I want to look and see how it all works. I have questions. That's all I'm going to say. I liked it though. Ultimately, I really enjoyed it. But I want to go back and I'm going to have to, it's going to require me making a chart, actually. I got to do some homework. Yes, Virginia, there is homework to do in this movie. I know it seems funny. I know you're like, what are you talking about? But it's true. But Alex, thank you for taking Doshi to Endgame. I'm very excited about this. Chris Miller says, congratulations on all the new subscribers. By the way, I have to tell you, not just I want to thank all my long-time subscribers, but all the new subscribers that are here that showed up. I did my reaction to Endgame, and it blew up. I mean, by thousands and thousands of people. Is my most watched video, and which is great. And I can't thank people enough for subscribing. I hope they enjoy being here. The more members we have of the Post-Geek Singularity community, I think the better. However, I want to make sure that everybody, we got to keep the positivity going. I think that that's important. So I want to hopefully that it'll just add and make our community better. Oh, would it surprise anyone to know that I have a letter from Willow Yang? And since this is an important day, it's Avengers Endgame Day, how could I not read another letter from Willow Yang? As everyone knows, to know Willow is to love Willow. She's currently watching. She's going through the original series and watching it. And she sent me another long letter. And since this is Endgame Day and this can be a long chat, it can be whatever we want it to be, I'm going to read her letter. So this one comes from, this is actually a change of pace, but it sort of speaks to community standards in a way, and it refers back to a previous chat, and I really appreciated this letter. It's not really necessarily Endgame related, but it's definitely related to the community and previous chats over the last couple of days, so I wanted to read it. Dear Rob, my apologies for bombarding you with extensively long letters. I don't like talking politics too much, but you and Mark C. and many other viewers have had some very interesting discourse over our current state of cultural sensitivity and censorship. When you mentioned the use of disclaimers by Warner Brothers for some of their less than politically correct cartoons, I immediately thought of Tom and Jerry. As a former non-Westerner, I thought I should share with you my own reactions to the racial caricatures and gags that were depicted in Tom and Jerry and other cartoons and films. Tom and Jerry, by the way, I should say that Willow came over. She immigrated from China to Canada. Tom and Jerry was quite popular in China. It was probably the first English language program that I had watched as a child. The cartoon had little dialogue, so it wasn't difficult for me to appreciate the sketches and laugh at the hilarious slapstick humor. Poor Tom. He can never catch a break, can he? I simply adored the show. It was probably my favorite thing to watch as a kid. Unfortunately, as with many cartoons produced at the time, Tom and Jerry contained material that is now considered racially insensitive. One recurring gag on the show involves the characters getting blasted by explosions, and their faces being blackened into stereotypical African-American ones as a result. There was also the character of Mammy Two Shoes, a caricature of African-American maid who takes care of the house that Tom and Jerry reside in. I understand these jokes now and why they are considered problematic and offensive to modern American audiences. However, as a child living in Shanghai, I had absolutely no knowledge of the racial and cultural conflicts and stereotypes that existed in America. I had never encountered a black person prior to coming to Canada. I had no idea of what blackface was. I just thought it was hilarious when characters got their faces stained by mud or gunpowder. I had no idea that Mammy Two Shoes spoke with a stereotypical African-American accent. And quite honestly, her speech was just gibberish to me anyway, since I didn't even understand English at the time. I remember watching an episode where Tom donned a headdress and began whooping while chasing Jerry around. Nowadays, I know this is a racial gag of Native Americans, but I had no idea of who Native Americans were when I was a kid. I simply thought that Tom had gone insane out of frustration and was hollering like a madman, and I found it quite funny. It just wasn't the stereotypes of other races that went over my head, however. I didn't understand the racial stereotypes that Westerners had of Asians either. When I first watched Lady and the Tramp, I simply thought the Siamese cats were creepy. I never realized that they were unflattering caricatures of East Asians. Seriously, though, why do Westerners draw us with giant buck teeth? There are some stereotypes that I understand and others that just left me scratching my head. Likewise, I never noticed that the Nemoidians in the Star Wars prequels were dressed like Chinese imperial officials and spoke with Asian accents until other people pointed it out to me. As a child, I just thought they were funny. To be honest, I still find them funny. Is this getting out of hand? And now are there two of them? Or this is getting out of hand. I won't even do the accent. This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them. I know that I'm a very fortunate person. I've never been discriminated against or felt marginalized. I live in Vancouver, after all, where an enormous proportion of the population are Chinese and other Asians. As such, I've never been particularly sensitive or felt offended by racial jokes. I thought Family Guy's Chinese NASCAR gag was hilarious. We are pretty bad when it comes to following traffic laws in China. It actually took my parents a while to get used to crossing the street only when the light is green, as opposed to whenever they felt like it. As I mentioned in a previous letter, my parents have gotten very disillusioned with the direction that the far left and the West are going. We have, after all, come from a country with a long history of tyrants trying to suppress and eliminate ideologies different from their own, ranging from the book burnings of the Qin dynasty to the censorship of the Communist Party today. I understand that the aforementioned Tom and Jerry cartoons, Disney's Dumbo and Song of the South, and many more, were all products of their time, and for better or worse, part of the North American cultural history. I certainly don't believe in erasing history or revising it. However, I do have to acknowledge that I don't have the perspective of an African American or Native American person when they're seeing the racial gags of themselves being depicted on screen. I don't have the perspective of many other Asian Americans either. Perhaps if I had been living in Canada during a different era, such as when head taxes and the Chinese Exclusion Act were in effect, I'd have felt much more differently. It is a difficult dilemma, and one that requires much cogent civil discourse, which, unfortunately, seems to be absent these days. I honestly can't provide the answers myself. I will just leave off with a small anecdote. My lab supervisor, PI, is Japanese. He did one of his postdocs in Israel at the Weizmann Institute. He told us some stories about what it was like living there and interacting with the Israelis and the Palestinian Arabs. According to him, the Arabs loved and admired the Japanese because, this is really bad, they helped inspire modern-day terrorism with their kamikaze during World War II. On the contrary, the Israelis stereotyped the Japanese and most other Asians as uneducated, blue-collar workers. My PI was actually once approached by a man on a bus and asked if he'd be interested in a construction job. Of course, here in North America, the perception is very different. Asians are often seen as nerds, obsessed with good grades and getting into prestigious colleges. A stereotype that I might add does come with a certain level of truth. I just find it interesting and quite amusing to hear all the differing stereotypes that other people in different countries have of us. It serves as a reminder that our perspective here in America and Canada is just one of a multitude across the globe. Yours sincerely, Willow. Well, Willow, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's as I've told the story in the past. I had a black friend who was in New Zealand working at Weta Digital, and I met him working on Lord of the Rings, and he often explained, like, wherever we would go, people gravitated to him. And New Zealand's a pretty white place, and it was a former Commonwealth country, and so a black American was very popular because there just weren't that many of them. And he told me once, he said, man, if I knew what I knew now years ago, I would have come here a long time ago. It really does. We have to be mindful, especially in this country where we're always now speaking about on college campuses about diversity and people getting their voice and everybody being woke, that around the world, everything is different. It depends where you're standing. Life has changed. Life changes depending on what country you're in. I explained to people how when I was in South Korea last February of 2018, I learned what it was like to feel that isolated because there just aren't a lot of white, cis, middle-aged dudes in South Korea unless you're on a military base. So it is really always a function of where you happen to be. Perspective is where you're coming from, and it can be different for everybody. And we need to remember that. My whole thing is, remember, when the aliens come and attack, nobody cares what color you are, how you define yourself, what gender you think you are. It doesn't matter. When the laser beams and the heat rays start flying, we're all human beings. We're all in the same predicament. We all need to band together and work as a group, or we're all going to fucking die. That's just the way I think about it. And remember, nobody wants to end their lives being blasted by a Martian heat ray. It's not a good look. It's not helpful. Jessica Tennis is here. Hello, Jessica. If episode 9 does not end in Balance in the Force, does it make the prequels most meaningless? Whedon said he had the best Hulk scene he had to cut. I don't know. It really depends how it ends. I don't think it makes... Look, stories are journeys. There's never really an end. It's just one story ends and another story begins. Life is in constant flux, and I think how long could the Force be at balance anyway? Somebody would come to unbalance it. I just hope Episode 9 is a good movie. Frankly, I don't have much invested in this new Star Wars trilogy. I'm invested in seeing what happens with Luke. Now I want to see what happens with Lando, R2, and 3PO. I think R2-D2, I think we should be protesting hashtag justice for R2. That's what I say. R2 has been abysmally treated. It makes me angry. I have a couple more letters. Actually, one letter I want to read, another one. Clarissa says, pre-live teaser, I have read all of Archer's books. He is one of my favorite novelists. I don't know which Archer you're talking about, but I think that is great that you've read all of his books. There's a lot of authors. I love James Lee Burke. I've read all of his books. Andrew Vaux. I've read all of his books. Stephen King. I've read most of his books. Let's see. Echo Base Network says R&B won't answer that question. Mike Bodden says this. All he said is that there is a cameo, and that's not really news, is it? No. We all know that the last Stan Lee cameo is in Endgame. I won't answer. I won't say anything about what it is until you all have a chance to see it. The Blue Corner says America is getting a bit too sensitive with all that stuff. I agree, man. I agree. It is getting too sensitive. Louis Yu says, Clarissa, thank you. I am reading a paperback copy from my college days. I don't know what that is. I say I miss out. Donnie Pearson says, speaking of all things Disney, season 3 of Disney Channel's Andy Mack to be its final. Marge Simpson disapproving murmur, anyone? That's too bad. It's kind of a bummer. Let's see. HB Haga says, have you read much Zelazny? I have not read much Zelazny. I read a lot more of it when I was a kid. But not recent. God, I haven't read any Roger Zelazny. God, when was I can't remember what the last book I read of his was. But I did like him a lot. Was Lord of Light Zelazny? I don't know. That's interesting. Vesna says, thank God for Chinese girls. Without them, I could never find my shoe number. It seems that everyone in Europe has big feet. I wish I had big feet. Whenever I enter the shoe shop, they always say that my number doesn't exist. I'm sorry for that. That's a bummer. Darren Batten says, I heard there's an audio stinger at the end of the credits for Avengers. I don't even know what that there is something, but I don't know what it is. It's such a nothing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm supposed to make about it. Pre-live teaser says, bad joke warning. How did Chuck Norris beat Gandalf the Grey with a roundhouse kick, silly? It's pretty good. I like that. Willow Yang says, laugh out loud, Vesta. My mom makes fun of me for having big feet, even though I'm only like size 4 to 5. Terry Flynn says, Vesta, eBay is your friend. I buy Chinese shoes. Nice. Rick Bosanegra says, greetings from El Paso, R&B. El Paso, Tejas. By the way, I will be in Houston for the Schmodown. I'm only going to be there for a day. I think that's May 18th. I'm flying to they're flying me actually to Houston. I'll be overnight there. I will be participating in the Schmodown with my team, the family. Andrew Guy is going to wipe the floor with Ben Bateman if you are Schmodown fans. So come meet me. We'll go out and drink afterwards. So I'll be in Houston, Tejas. So everybody who wants to come, I don't know if you can still get tickets, but yes, I will be there. You know what? I'm going to end this chat, but I'm going to end with a great letter, another great letter from another great regular. And I want to end this chat because it's almost 2 hours and I have I gotta do some laundry. I got to move my laundry from the washer into the dryer. Although this is my shirt. I've got my Flurkin shirt on. Bring me Thanos. This letter I'm going to read, this last letter for the day, a lot of letters, comes from the great Norman Lau. Norman Lau sent me another great letter. I love Norman's letters. He's very thoughtful. He's a very good fan. I wonder, you know what? No one's sponsoring this, but I'm just going to say it for those who don't know. Norman loved me saying this. There is a 2-volume Babylon 5 encyclopedia, hardcover slipcase encyclopedia you can get on Amazon. It's available now. It's like $200. If you like Babylon 5, as I know Norman Lau does more than just about anything in the world, I figured I would point that out to you. I do not have this encyclopedia. One day I'd like to get it. I love Babylon 5. Anyway, Norman, that plug was for you. I know you don't get any money from it, but hey. So this comes from the great Norman Lau. Congratulations, RMB, on achieving what many consider to be an incredible milestone in YouTube broadcasting, reaching 100 shows and counting. I believe you are well on your way of shaping and molding a very strong, loyal, interactive, and dynamic community, and I firmly believe that this is built on one of your greatest personal strengths, passion. This is a trait that cannot be taught, cannot be learned. It is truly and deeply an energy field that, like the Force, penetrates us, surrounds us, and binds our galaxy together. In this case, a galaxy of fandom. Which brings me to my point and question for today's letter and for the Post-Geek Singularity to ponder. How are you investing your... Oh, Gilbert's barking. Somebody must be home. How are you investing your fandom energy? For me, recently, I've been personally feeling incredibly optimistic and positive about my fandom. Amidst the chaotic seas of the uncertainty, bile, vitriol, and consistent and pervasive negative energy that surrounds many fandoms that I love that used to inspire me, Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, and to some extent, the drama surrounding Brie Larson and the future of the MCU. I spent a lot of time on YouTube watching videos from various YouTube personalities that have strongly promoted their sentiments on these fandoms for good or ill. Gilbert, do you have strong sentiments on these fandoms? And in turn, these videos led me down a path of discovering a fairly large segment of broadcasters in the YouTube fandom community that are incredibly good at vocalizing their opinions, intentions, and do have the capacity to sway their viewers because of that incredibly powerful force that I mentioned earlier, passion. Passion is one of our most influential driving forces as human beings. Passion for life, for love, for food, for entertainment. Passion has driven us to war and peace, to ignorance and enlightenment, to exclude and to include. And in our case, as members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity, to elevate or denounce that which we believe connects us in ways that cannot possibly be described, but can be explained through the intensity of our passion. Passion is an incredibly delicate balance of our internal positive and negative energies. And when passion deviates towards the either positive or negative, we are moved so wholeheartedly as slaves to that energy. And what comes of that can either be extremely uplifting or incredibly defeating. And when we feel betrayed, as some of us have, by our fandoms that no longer promote the same aspirational ideals that they once did, our passion becomes all-consuming and dictates behavior that at times can be uncontrollable, dangerous, and above all, self-defeating. Cobra Kai, The Orville, The Expanse, and decades-old shows like UFO, Space 1999, and Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, these are all new passions for me that have helped me return to what I love most about being a passionate member of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. I can see it in my attitude towards my social media interaction. I can feel it when I talk to people about what I've recently enjoyed. I can see it when I know that I've inspired someone to try what I love. And in that model, in that dynamic, I know that I've embraced and realigned my passion that best represents who I am and what I believe. I believe in inspiring others, and Rob inspires us here through passionate discussion, debate, analysis, and critique that allows us to discover the truths about what we love, who loves those ideals and beliefs with us, and all of the incalculable permutations, interpretations, and possibilities of further discussion. As a lifelong fan of Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, and other tentpole fandoms, as they no longer currently inspire what I need from my fandoms and entertainment, it is far easier to pivot from what I think is my issue with them and invest in the time, energy, and positivity that makes a greater impact in my personal well-being and in my life as a whole. So in closing, find your true passion. Be a positive force for good in your fandom, and above all, be true to yourself and what you love, because when you can feel that truth and embrace that pureness of heart and soul, what you love becomes so much more satisfying, knowing that there is nothing out there that can take that feeling away from you. Thanks again, Rob, for your consideration in reading my letter. Norman C. Lau, Twitter and Instagram, Lounge Lizard. I get what you're saying. Lounge Lizard. Let me just tell you what it is. It's at LAONGE Lizard. I like that. Lounge Lizard. It's Lao Lizard. I get it. Lao Lizard. Lounge. I get it. Lounge Lizard. But once again, Norman, couldn't agree more. That's what this chat is all about. That's what this weekend is all about. You know, seldom do we have the kind of geek out weekend that we're having now. We got Endgame opening and we've got the Battle of Winterfell. I mean, if you're not excited about that, how often do we get a weekend with this kind of entertainment? I don't know what to say. Darth Suthius asks, do you think Sentry could fit in the MCU? He's my fave. Sentry is a very interesting character with a very interesting history. I think they could bring Sentry into the MCU. He might be slightly overpowered, however. Well, members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, you imagination connoisseurs out there, go forth and enjoy the Endgame. I am deliriously excited about seeing it a second time. I'm leaving in 2 hours. I'm going to the ArcLight. I might have, is what some people would say, a drinky poo, perhaps. I will be having a little meal there with Elizabeth, her daughter Sophie, and her friend. We're going to see Endgame. I get to experience it with my girlfriend and her daughter. We're both, all of us, MCU fans here up in this hizzle. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks all of you new members and new subscribers. Please subscribe, like these chats. I'm blown away by how many new subscribers I have. It's an ongoing. I'm going to have 10,000 subscribers soon, which is amazing to me. And I think it's a function of all of us. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks for Lucky Tiger for sponsoring these chats. I really appreciate that. And, you know, I'm going to be back on the John Campea show. I don't know if I'm on tomorrow. I didn't ask him. Usually I'm not on Fridays, but if not, I will be back here at noon. I expect most of you will have seen Endgame, or maybe a lot of you will have. I shouldn't say most of you, but I can't wait to hear what your impressions are. I don't think I'll be doing a spoiler discussion until I do one with John, even though it's going to be hard not to talk spoilers, but I want to thank all of you. I mean, when I'm here on Monday, I think I might have to do we're you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Monday, this coming Monday, I'm going to do an afternoon chat, probably like a later afternoon chat, but it's going to be all about Endgame and the Battle of Winterfell. We're going to be talking about epic geekdom. Maybe I'll try and do around 3-ish, something like that. That'll be fun. But all of you go forth. Remember, the North remembers. I hope Sansa doesn't die. I don't want anyone to die. Who do you think's going to die? You know what I think's going to? Here's what I think. Predictions. Brienne of Tarth is going to die. Tormund dying. Maybe on the outside, Daenerys Targaryen die. Just think that's just prediction, because their stories are essentially over. I really believe that Daenerys, I mean, are we going to watch her go crazy? We could, maybe. Do I think that the Golden Company is not going to do exactly what Cersei thinks they're going to do? Perhaps. I think there's a debt that wasn't quite all paid up yet. We'll see. Looking forward to it. Woohoo! I will be back at any rate tomorrow morning, or tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Can't even speak. I'm so excited. Go out there, embrace your fandom, love this movie, have a good time with it. I can't wait to hear what everyone says. Go with your loved ones. Multi-generations of people are going to this movie. It's going to be great fun. And isn't it great? We live in a time where we get Endgame. We get the Orville season finale tonight. We get the Gotham season finale tonight. We get the Battle of Winterfell, the 80-minute Battle of Winterfell on Sunday. My God. We live in fabulous times, people. Fabulous times. It's great to be an imagination connoisseur. Thanks for all of your support. I very much appreciate it. And it's fantastic. Have a better day.